Hello learners, in this video we will be discussing about the Unit 3 under the lecture of translation. And for this unit, we will be dealing with units of translation or the systematic approaches to translation. Let us first define the unit of translation. When we say unit of translation, it refers to the linguistic level in which the source text is recodified in the target language. Focus on the word recodified. So it means that from our source text, we will translate that into the target language, but this time there will be a change in the codes of that particular language. So that is what we call unit of translation. In other words, this is the element used by the translator when working on the source text. So this is very much doable with translators, and this is also varied according to translators. It depends on the comfortability of the translator. It may be an individual word, group, clause, sentence, or even the whole text. In the first, discussing the word as a possible unit of translation. Vinay and Darvelnet draw on Saussure's key concepts of the linguistic sign defined by the signifier and signified. So it depends on the translator as to how he will divide the source text for the translation into the target language. So if the translator is comfortable with using just words, then that would be it. If the translator is more comfortable with the use of phrases, then phrases will be used as the unit of translation. Meaning to say, it depends on the translator as to how many words or elements is he going to use as a group in order for him to translate. And I highlighted that it depends on the translator. Now, we also have this concept of signifier and signified. According to the concept box we have here, it says that the famous Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure invented the linguistic term sign that unifies signifier, sound, image, or word, and signified concept. We have the linguist Ferdinand de Saussure, and he centered on the idea of the so-called sign. So when we have sign, this means that we have a signifier and then we have a signified. If it's a signifier, then that is what we see. What we see, it can be an image, it can be a word, or even what we hear. It's a sound. And then that signifier is linked with signified, the concept. When you see something, there is a concept linked to it. You see a cell phone, then there is a concept behind that. You know that it is a cell phone. You already know the concept about cell phones. You know that it is used for communication, it is used for education, and so on and so forth. So whatever you see, signifier, there's always a signified, or there's always the concept. So that was coined by the Swiss linguist Ferdinand de Saussure. He also emphasizes that the sign is by nature arbitrary and can only derive meaning from contrast with other signs in the same system. So the sign can also allow us to make distinctions. If we see cell phones, we know that cell phones are not laptops, even if they belong to the same group of gadgets, devices, or tools that we use for communication, tools that we use in education. However, we understand the contrast that this particular phone is not a laptop, and the other way around. Laptop is not a phone. So we can distinguish them. We can contrast them. We can contrast the two devices that we say cell phones are mobile, and handy. You can bring cell phones anywhere. You can put them in your pocket. However, laptops are bigger in size and you cannot just put them inside your pocket. Right. We now proceed. We now proceed to the so-called the lexicological unit. The lexicological unit described by Vinay and Darvelnet contain lexical elements grouped together to form a single element of thought. So, in a particular sentence from a source text, there are so many words in it. There are so many words there. Let's say the sentence, my mother is very beautiful when she wore the Indian sari. There are so many words there. Now, from that particular sentence, as a translator for the other language in the target language, we can always group them according to our comfortability. So we will group them. We cannot just immediately translate the whole thing into one meaning. That would be risky, or sometimes that would affect the accuracy of our translation. Or sometimes we cannot just do it that way. It's very complicated. Therefore, we can just group them. Now, that is what we call the lexicological unit. It's the lexical elements that we group together and then we translate that one by one. And then another lexical elements we group in so that we can translate that into the target language. And then we proceed now to the next subtopic, the unit of translation as a prelude to analysis. Division of source text and target text into units of translation is of particular importance in Vinay and Darvelnet's work as a prelude to analysis of changes in translation, the translation shifts that will occur. So we have to understand that it is very much important as to how we divide the units of translation. Always remember that when we try to translate, we always have to analyze first. We always have to analyze from the source text into the target language. So we don't just risk it and provide the exact translation word by word or by phrase. There must be an analysis. Now, it is important to note that division of source text and target text into the units of translation is a particular importance in Vinay and Darbelnet's work as a prelude to analysis of changes in translation. According to them, we always have to look into the unit of translation. We have to analyze. There is no specific pattern as to how many words per unit of translation do we consider so that we can say that as one group and then we will translate that particular group into the target language. That's why there must be an analysis. There is no ideal or standard pattern as to how many groups do we consider as one unit of translation. It depends. It varies on the comfortability of the translator and at the same time it varies on the source text and the target language. For example, we have this example, this poster. So let's say there's this poster, traveling from Heathrow. There are easy to follow instructions on the larger self-service touchscreen ticket machines. Okay, example that this poster was not written in English language. It was written in a different language. So when a translator approaches this poster, the translator would then use his most comfortable unit of translation and then divide it according to his preference. So probably he will be able to break them down into these units of translation. There are one unit of translation, one group. And then easy to follow, another group. Instructions, another group. Only, another group. Larger, another group. Self-service, another group. Touch screen, another group. And then ticket machines. So these will be the divisions or the units of translation of that certain person who would translate the poster. Now, you can also try this when you want to translate this English poster into your mother tongue. And then how are you going to approach it when you try to translate it? So you cannot just simply use the whole sentence. That would risk you or that would be complicated if you use the whole thing as one unit or as one group. So what you do to make it effective is to divide them per group. Okay, so you divide it according to these are. These are. So what's that equivalent in your mother tongue or in your language, in your first language? So that is how we translate or that is how we approach a certain source text. We divide them according how we interpret it, according to how we analyze it. Because sometimes the groupings would also take time. We have to invest in the groupings of the elements, groupings of the words, because there might be words that will be grouped mistakenly to the other group. Next, we have translation at different levels. According to Michael Halliday, these are the systematic analysis in the translation. So we can analyze the any particular source text into morpheme, word, group, clause, sentence. For example, if it's morpheme, we have the arrive and then the ing. If it's word, the word arriving. If it's group, the foot and mouth disease. So this is a group, the foot and mouth disease, because you cannot divide them. Again, based on the analysis, you cannot divide this group, foot and mouth. If you divide foot and mouth and then disease, then it will lose the interpretation. It will lose the meaning. So this is already one group. This is a disease, the so-called foot and mouth disease. So this is one group. And then clause and then sentence. So it depends on the level of our translation. How do we divide the translation? Next, we have the so-called functional sentence perspective or the FSP. This is a form of analysis of sentence and information structure created by Prague School of Linguistics. Syntactic structure known as a linear modification is an important structuring device. However, communication is driven forward primarily by communicative dynamism, that is, by elements that are context independent and contribute most new information. We have the so-called syntactic structure, which means it is the linear modification. It is a linear modification because, of course, syntactic structure, it's the statement that we produce, that we provide. So we can always modify. Remember how you can paraphrase one sentence in many possible paraphrasing? So that's it. You always modify a statement. You can modify a statement. You can state one thought in many different sentences. So that's why it is called linear modification. And then we always have to remember that our communication is dynamic. It's unique. Every conversation is unique. Every communication is unique. There are times that when we engage in a conversation or in a meeting, there's a momentum wherein we want to be highly emotional. There are some conversations where we don't want to be emotional. We want to be logical. We want to reason out well. So it's based on the communicative dynamism. So it depends. That's why when you translate, you have to understand what is the context of this sentence? Where was this sentence said? What was the conversation like? What was the meaning? What was the agenda of the meaning when this sentence was said? Because the communicative dynamism will affect how the sentence was said by that speaker. There, the these are most often, but not always, focused towards the end of a sentence. The part of the sentence containing the new information, known as the rem, whereas old or given information is contained in the theme. So you will find the rem at the end of the sentence and then the theme at the beginning of the sentence. Now we proceed to the summary of this unit. As a summary, the unit of translation is normally the linguistic unit which the translator uses when translating. So this is the tool that the translator uses whenever he translates from source text to target language. Translation theorists have proposed various units from individual word and group to clause and sentence and even higher levels such as text and intertextual levels. So translations are by levels. We can translate by word, we can translate by phrase, we can translate by text. There are also some levels like the contextual levels wherein you would have to really explain a certain joke because that joke is only applicable in that source language, but then one audience would want to understand and would want to laugh what was the joke about. So you really have to explain the contextual level. Why was it so funny? What was so funny about it? Importantly, Newmark makes the crucial point that all lengths of language can at different moments and also simultaneously be used as units of translation in the course of translation activity. So all lengths of language can be used as units of translation. There's no limit, there is no pattern as to how many words do you have to put as one for you to translate. No, there is no limit, there is no particular or pattern or fixed number. So it really depends on the translator and it depends on the source text or the target language. While it may be that the translator most often works at the sentence level, paying specific attention to problems raised by individual words or groups in that context, it is also important to take into account the function of the whole text and references to extra textual features. So again, even if you have tried to divide according to units of translation when you translated, you still have to analyze whether your your translation is accurate or appropriate for the context. Is it already understood or is it already giving justice to the source text? These are crucial areas that will be treated in more depth as this book develops. Right. So that is all for the unit 3, the units of translation.